The Billionaire and His Silent Girl. Thomas Wainwright built his empire from nothing. From a small-town mechanic's son to the CEO of a global tech conglomerate, he was the American dream. But none of his millions could heal the single wound that mattered, the silence of his little girl. Emily was 6 when tragedy struck. Her mother, Laura, had been driving home from Emily's dance recital when a drunk driver ran a red light. Emily was in the back seat. She survived. Her mother didn't. When Thomas arrived at the hospital that night, covered in rain and blood from holding his wife's broken body, he found Emily sitting quietly on a hospital bed, her little hands trembling. She looked up at him, and said nothing. Not a cry. Not a word. Just silence. Days turned into weeks. Then months. Then years. Doctors diagnosed her with selective mutism brought on by trauma. Others thought it was neurological. Some said she'd never speak again. Thomas refused to believe it. He built a private therapy wing in his mansion in Connecticut. He brought in specialists from Europe, experimental therapists from Japan, even a speech neural interface from Silicon Valley. He paid them fortunes, and still, Emily sat by the window, watching the world but never touching it. Her only comfort was a small stuffed bear named Buttons, the one toy she had in the car that night. She clung to it everywhere. Every morning, Thomas would sit beside her bed, touch her hand, and whisper, "I'd trade every dollar I have, just to hear you say one word, sweetie." But Emily would only look at him with those same glassy, blue eyes. One day, after yet another failed therapy session, Thomas broke down. He threw a vase against the wall, collapsing on the floor, his sobs echoing through the empty hall of his mansion. He felt like he was being punished, not for what he did, but for what he couldn't do. The world saw him as powerful. But inside, Thomas Wainwright was the loneliest man alive. 6 years later. Emily, now 12, was hospitalized again after collapsing from stress during a therapy test. The hospital, Riverside Medical Center, had been briefed about her condition. Her room was quiet, filled with light toys, soft music, and paintings. Thomas visited daily, always arriving in his tailored suits, face lined with exhaustion but determination. Doctors rotated in and out. Some spoke gently, some tried stimulus therapy, some even brought therapy dogs. But Emily didn't react. And then, came Sam Carter. Sam wasn't a doctor. He wasn't even part of the medical team. He was a street cleaner, the guy who mopped the hospital floors, cleaned the windows, and emptied the trash bins. He was in his early 40s, thin, with tired brown eyes and a calm, quiet face. He always hummed while he worked, soft country tunes that echoed down the sterile corridors. Most people ignored him. But Emily didn't. One morning, as Sam mopped the hallway near her room, he saw her small face pressed against the glass. She was watching him. He smiled, a small, kind smile, and waved. To his surprise, she lifted her hand, just a little, and waved back. Sam chuckled. "Well, look at that," he whispered. "Guess someone noticed old Sam today." He didn't know he was being watched. From a corner of the hall, Thomas stood frozen, seeing something no doctor had managed in years, his daughter's eyes reacting. Over the next week, Sam kept passing by Emily's room. He'd make funny faces through the glass, draw smiley faces with his mop handle on the floor's wet streaks, or blow little bubbles from his cleaning bucket to make her giggle. The nurses told him not to distract the patient. But Thomas told them to let it happen. For the first time in years, Emily's eyes had light in them. One afternoon, Thomas found Sam in the janitor's closet. "Mr. Carter, right?" Thomas said. Yes, sir. Sorry if I overstepped." "No," Thomas interrupted softly. "You did more in a week than anyone's done in 6 years." Sam smiled awkwardly. "Sometimes, sir, people just need to see someone who's not wearing a white coat." Those words hit Thomas harder than any doctor's report. So he let Sam visit Emily's room. Every day, Sam would sit on the floor beside her bed and tell stories, about growing up in the countryside, about his dog Max, about how he once tried to fix a toaster and blew a fuse. Emily never spoke, but she listened. And then, one morning, she did something no one expected. She laughed. A small, broken laugh, like the first crack in a frozen lake. Thomas dropped his coffee cup when he heard it. Nurses came running. And there she was, smiling at Sam, hugging her bear tightly. Sam looked up, tears in his eyes. "That's a sound worth all the gold in the world," he whispered. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. The next day, Sam didn't show up. Hospital staff said he'd called in sick. Emily grew restless. She wouldn't eat. Wouldn't sleep. Her anxiety spiked. Doctors worried she'd regress. Thomas, panicked, ordered his staff to find Sam. When they did, the truth shattered him. The voice of kindness. Sam Carter didn't live far, just across the city in a rundown apartment complex. When Thomas's driver arrived, Sam was being taken away in an ambulance. He had collapsed at work the day before, his lungs failing. The hospital report said he'd been living with untreated lung disease for years, unable to afford proper medication. He'd been working 2 jobs just to pay rent. When Thomas arrived at the ward, Sam was hooked to oxygen, pale but smiling faintly. "You didn't have to come, sir," Sam said through shallow breaths. "You saved my daughter," Thomas whispered. "Why didn't you tell anyone you were sick?" "Didn't think it mattered," Sam smiled weakly. "I'm just a janitor." Those words broke Thomas. "You're not just anything," he said. "You gave her something no one else could." Sam chuckled softly. "She doesn't need doctors, Mr. Wainwright. She needs someone who listens." Thomas stayed by his side that night. He ordered his personal doctors to treat Sam, offered to cover all his expenses, but Sam refused. "Use it for her," he said. "Just tell her I said she's brave." The next morning, Sam's bed was empty. He had passed quietly in his sleep. Thomas stood by the window of the ward, tears streaming down his face. He had all the money in the world, but the man who gave his daughter her voice had died with nothing. He went home broken. Emily saw the look on his face and seemed to understand. She walked to him, holding buttons. Then, in a voice soft as a whisper, she said her first words in 6 years. "Daddy, where's Sam?" Thomas froze. His hands trembled. Tears burst forth as he fell to his knees, hugging her tight. He's with Mommy now, sweetheart." Emily smiled faintly. "Can I see him again someday?" Thomas nodded through tears. "Yes, baby. You will." That night, Thomas didn't sleep. Instead, he made a call. 2 months later, the hospital held a ceremony. A new wing was unveiled, the Sam Carter Center for Healing Through Compassion, a place where trauma therapy was led not just by doctors, but by artists, storytellers, and everyday people who understood kindness. And right beside the plaque with Sam's name was a small glass box, containing a single mop handle, shaped into a heart, and a stuffed bear named Button sitting proudly beside it. Emily spoke publicly for the first time, her voice shaky but steady. "Sam made me laugh when no one else could. He made me feel safe. And he made Daddy remember what love sounds like." The crowd cried. So did Thomas. As the camera pans out, the sun rises over the hospital, a symbol of hope reborn through the simplest act of compassion. Broken Heart Epilogue/Message. Sometimes, healing doesn't come from money, medicine, or machines. It comes from a simple, human touch, a smile, a story, a friend who listens. Thomas Wainwright learned that the richest people aren't those with wealth. They're the ones who share warmth.